Bret Baier on Fox News conducted an interview with Donald Trump that was truly wild. We look at a lot of Trump speeches and interviews, and this one's at the top for just how bonkers it was, in part because of Trump's responses and in part because of the host, Bret Baier, actually bringing forward good questions in some situations, and that's rare to see in some of these Fox News interviews with Trump or right-wing network interviews, Newsmax, OAN with Trump. But Bret Baier actually had some good moments, and it was interesting to see. And the last moment we'll look at from this interview was amazing. A question that I wish would get asked. Hey, Trump, you're constantly saying you hire the best people. You're the best at kind of running businesses, organizations. That's part of why you'd be a good chief executive. But when you actually had the shot to lead a massive organization, the federal government, the executive branch more specifically, you hired all these people that you yourself would later say were horrible and would eventually speak out against you. We'll get to that question. Truly absurd and entertaining, to be honest. But first, we'll start with this on his federal indictment. Stuff in this interview that I think you could say possibly could be used against him later on in the upcoming trial in this documents case because of him admitting to committing crimes. Take a look at this.
Please, could we have it back?
And they
please,
asked for that.
Because they have no... We
they
were
did
talking.
Ask for it.
No, and
they said,
I gave
can you
them
give the documents back?
And we were talking.
And then they said they went to DOJ to subpoena you to get them
Which
back.
They've never done before.
Right.
And
but why not just hand them over then?
Because I had boxes. I want to go through the boxes and get all my personal things out. I don't want to hand that over to NARA yet. And I was very busy, as you've sort of seen.
Yeah, but according to the indictment, you then tell this aide to move to other locations after telling your lawyers to say you'd fully complied with the subpoena when you hadn't.
But before I send boxes over, I have to take all of my things out. These boxes...
He doesn't even deny what's in the indictment. I've talked about this previously. We'll watch more of the clip in a second. But he doesn't... Oh, excuse me. Sorry, cut to the wrong camera. He doesn't deny what's being alleged. He just says either... What about blank? What about Hillary? What about Hunter Biden? What about Joe Biden? Or he says, I did all the things, but I'm allowed to. Maybe he'll point to this being unprecedented, as you heard him do, but he'll never actually refute. And so when he gets into a setting where he has to defend himself, I don't know what he's going to do. He's out publicly providing such a weak defense that I couldn't possibly imagine would be effective in the courtroom. Continuing.
Were interspersed with all sorts of things, golf shirts, clothing, pants, shoes. There were many things. I would say much more, not that I know of, but everything was declassified. And Biden didn't have the right to do that because he was...
Okay, so he's back to that. Number one, this talking point we've gone through in the past. Actually, vice presidents do have declassification ability established, if I'm not mistaken, in 2008 and possibly 2009, and so that talking point's not even accurate. But also, this doesn't actually have to do with, number one, a bunch of the charges against him don't have to do with him necessarily handling incorrectly classified information, but instead the obstruction, the lying to authorities. He was subpoenaed for material, whether or not he thought it was classified or not, he should have turned it over. But also, he admitted on tape that he knew the documents, or at least a particular one, was still classified, and he had it in his possession. So very weak stuff there. And then you have this.
I don't want to dwell on it, but according to the indictment, you were here at Bedminster on July 21st, 2021, after you're no longer president, and you were recorded saying that you had a document detailing a plan of attack on another country that was prepared by the U.S. military for you when you were president, the Iran attack plan. You remember that?
Ready?
You were recorded.
It wasn't a document.
Okay.
I had lots of paper. I had copies of newspaper articles.
It's so strange when he does that. Ready? Because he's trying to think of what he wants to say. Ready?
I had copies of magazines.
I know. This is specifically a quote. You're quoted on the recording saying the document was secret, adding that you could have declassified it while you were president, but, quote, now I can't. You know, this is still secret, highly confidential. And the indictment cites the recording and the testimony from people in the room saying you showed it to people there that day. So you say on this, on tape,
it says just the opposite.
That you can't declassify it, so why have it?
When I said that I couldn't declassify it now, that's because I wasn't wasn't president. I never made any bones about that. When I'm not president, I can't declassify.
And that's what you said. You didn't declassify it.
I said, no. I said I couldn't
could have
but that wasn't a document, Brett. There was no document. That was a massive amount of papers and everything else.
It's so incoherent. No. Wait, hold up, Brett. You're getting crazy. You're going off the rails. It was not a document. It was a paper that I wasn't saying was classified. I was saying I couldn't declassify it, but not that. But I said I couldn't declassify Yikes. Now, by the way, and before we move on to more from this interview, the trial date has been set for August 14th for this trial, the United States v. Donald J. Trump. Pretty historic, August 14th. I was seeing that could change, but as of now, August 14th, which I'm glad that is actually relatively soon. I want to see this actually litigated in court as soon as possible. Then you have this. He just cannot stop insisting the 2020 election was stolen without evidence.
What do you say to that female independent suburban voter who feels that way, to win her back?
First of all, I won in 2020 by a lot, okay? Let's get that straight. I won in 2020.
You know that
and if you look at all of the tapes, if you look at everything that you want to look at, you take a look at Truth to Vote, where they have people stuffing the ballot boxes on tapes, or
Mr. President,
let's go to recent. Well, wait a minute. Let's go to recent. FBI Twitter. Let's go to recent. The 51 agents, all corrupt stuff, Brett.
Understand about the Hunter Biden,
no, but
all
that's cheating
fair
on the
things.
election.
But
that's cheating on the election.
You lost the 2020 election.
Brett. You take a look at all of the stuffed ballots. You take a look at all of the things, including things like the 51 intelligence agents.
There were recounts in all of the swing states. There was not significant widespread
We're trying
fraud.
to get recounts, real recounts, not just
investigations,
numbers of votes
widespread
cast.
corruption. There was not a sense of that. There were lawsuits, more than 50 of them, by your lawyers, some in front of judges.
Okay. So if you thought the Dominion lawsuit didn't have an effect, you would be wrong, because there Bret Baier's like, Mr. President, I'm sorry, I have to say you're lying. That's not true. It's not factually backed up. Otherwise, we're gonna get sued again. And it's great to see, indeed. Now, what's funny is he's saying after the point about recounts, because every time we go through this, I mention recounts, audits, investigations, everything yielded same results, free and fair election. Members of Trump's own administration have admitted that so many times, including when we were kind of in the heat of that debacle. And he's saying, no, we're still trying to get proper recounts done. It's 2023, and he's still trying to get a recount done from the 2020 election, even though right-wingers have done recounts. The notable example being the Cyber Ninja organization that did a recount and ended up finding, if I'm not mistaken, that actually Biden had won by more votes than previously counted. Small numbers, still perfectly acceptable, but the exact opposite of what Trump was insisting was going to happen, even when people who were supportive of his message got their hands on this information. As Bret Baier indicated, yes, 60 plus court cases, time and time again, laughed out of court. Trump's claims were, and then also notably one that's not mentioned enough, but is so damning against Trump here in the context of this conversation, is that Trump, his team, before January 6th, after the 2020 election, hired researchers to look into the swing states that he was making claims about. The researchers looked into the swing states that he was saying were stolen and came back to Trump's team and said, we couldn't find evidence of widespread fraud. I'm sorry, we couldn't find the evidence you were wanting us to find. And after that, Trump continued to this day to lie about the election. So there's no doubt on that one, but Trump will continue forward anyways. And then this truly stunning moment on national TV, Bret Baier says this about Trump's hiring decisions.
In 2016, you said that. I'm going to surround myself with only the best and most serious people.
Well, I did do that.
This
and we
time,
had tremendous, look, we had the best economy we've ever had. The world has ever seen.
Your Vice President, Mike Pence, is running against you.
Yeah.
Your Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, your she's running against you. Your former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said he's not supporting you. You mentioned National Security Advisor John Bolton. He's not supporting you either. You mentioned Attorney General Bill Barr, says you shouldn't be president again, calls you the consummate narcissist and troubled man. You recently called Barr a gutless pig. Your second defense secretary is not supporting you, called you irresponsible. This week, you and your White House called your White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, weak and ineffective and born with a very small brain. You called your acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, a born loser. You called your first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, dumb as a rock, and your first Defense Secretary, James Mattis, the world's most overrated general. You called your White House Press Secretary, Kayleigh Canadian, milquetoast, and multiple times you've referred to your Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, as Mitch McConnell's China-loving wife. So, why did you hire all of them in the first place?
Because I hired 10 to 1 that were fantastic. We had a great...
Okay. Because I hired 10 to 1 who were fantastic. Really? Because I can't think of, at least in my lifetime and multiple lifetimes before that, any administration that saw as many people within it come out of it and speak out against it and talk about how the head of that organization, that administration, I should say, being Donald Trump, was absolutely not fit to serve in the position that he was serving in. And Trump promoted himself as, with this experience in business, I know how to make hiring and firing decisions. I can find the best people, and sure, I don't have experience in the position I'm going to be in, or similar ones that we think of as relevant to the position of president, but I'm going to find people. I'm so knowledgeable about finding the right people that I'm going to run the government in a fantastic way. It's going to be wonderful, beautiful. And then we have 4 years of watching people go in and go out, and once they're on the out, talking about just how absurd of a leader Trump was, how irresponsible, narcissistic, and all the different things we've discussed on a daily basis, all the reasons he should not be president of the United States. And he can't contend with that information at all.